Welcome to the LSU NCBRT Preparedness Podcast. I'm your host, Ashley Markle. I am a curriculum development specialist here at NCBRT, and I work in collaboration with subject matter experts to create valuable and timely training for the responder community. The National Center for Biomedical Research and Training provides mobile training to both the national and international emergency response community. This series covers an officer-involved shooting in which one officer lost his life and another was critically wounded. So please take care when listening. Welcome back to the podcast. If you missed the first two parts of this series, head back to hear Sam's account of the incident and the immediate aftermath. But today we'll finish up our conversation by discussing the lasting impacts this experience had on him both personally and professionally, as well as some lessons learned from this incident. So Sam, thank you for joining us again.
Thanks for having me.
Can you tell a little bit about how this incident impacted you going forward?
Absolutely, and it had deep and lasting impact on me as not just a person, but in my professional life as a leader and how I saw that role really. And like I said in the last episode, one thing that I was bound and determined to do was, just like I said to the guys, it wasn't lip service when I told them, when I would go to each one of them and say, hey, we're going to be okay, and we're going to make something positive of this. Mm-hmm. I truly meant that. And one thing about a tactical team, and this is true of tactical teams all over the country, when we go back to do our after-action review, it's very well known that our process is, you need to absolutely get rid of your ego. Your ego is not your amigo. Mm-hmm. So we take the gloves off. We're going to have a very crucial, critical, no holds barred, professional, very plain spoken discussion. We go through the entire situation and we say, here's what I did. Here's why I did it. And here was the result. And the rest of the team says they will either, if you don't call yourself out, that's one of the unwritten rules. You better call your own mistakes out, because if we have to do it, it'll be worse.
Yeah.
But it is intended to ensure that all mistakes are revealed, all mistakes are called out, and all mistakes are mitigated in future training so that the mistake we made today won't be made in the future. That's critical. And the things that we did positive, we want to sustain those and build upon them. So it's a very, very honest and open process. And additionally to that, one of the problems was we were not able to have that immediately because we have a criminal investigation taking place. We have an administrative investigation taking place. So we were limited in the amount of things we could talk about in open forum for a while. Mm-hmm. We like to get that done within the 24 hours if we can. One of the things we also have to do is within 72 hours, we have to have a psychological / mental health / wellness debrief with our on-staff psychologists. And we do that and everybody goes around. And that's really for the wellness piece and the resiliency piece and the psychological health piece, which is a very positive thing. So some of the lessons that we came out with this, we do understand that sometimes, no matter how good we are, because like we saw in our extraordinarily brave and skilled warriors that fight for our nation overseas, even the very highest level of our military armed services, sometimes some of them lost their lives. So we also understand, we're not comparing ourselves to them by any stretch, but I am saying that no matter how capable we are, no matter how skilled we are, and no matter how professional we are, sometimes we have a bad result. Sometimes when the bad guy has a vote and he has an advantage over us for whatever reason, it's possible that we will lose somebody or have someone hurt badly. And that came to pass here. Yeah. We understand that the only thing we can do in that situation is do everything we can to fulfill our mission, which is to protect innocent people. This was one of the worst things that's ever happened to, it's probably the worst thing that's ever happened to our team on a live operation, and it's one of the worst things that's ever happened to this department on a live operation. That said, we did get stuff out of it. We did rededicate ourselves to our training. We were able to identify some possible gaps and some possible resource needs and equipment. We developed more of a network and more of a connection with some of the higher level hostage rescue practitioners in the United States with the FBI's hostage rescue team, some of our military special operators, and people of that nature, and some of the other larger municipalities teams. We've done some cross training with them. Not that our skill set was lacking, but if we're not improving, we're not getting better, and that's not acceptable. We also identified some tactics, techniques, and procedures that we decided that there are some things we can streamline, there are some things we can look at from a different perspective that can possibly be better. Would any of that help that night? Probably not. And we're satisfied that we did everything that we possibly could have, given the situation, given the tactical reality and the circumstances. We did everything possible to save people's lives and do it in a way where we were not recklessly endangering our own lives. Absolutely. Through the very best tactical and operational decision-making possible. We also identified, and like I alluded to, some of the stuff I asked you to put a pin in the previous episodes. There are some personal failings on my part, and I own those 100%, and I recognize it, and I've dedicated myself to not making those mistakes again. There are some due process procedural issues that came up. I related to you how I telephoned one of the team leaders and asked him what happened, and he relayed that stuff to me because one of the leaders of the organization was asking him to do so, so he did so. When I went to the scene in person, and then myself and my lieutenant were interviewing the officers, and I'm not talking about a formal interview. I'm saying we walked up like a normal person and said, "Tell us what happened." That's fine and good, but we completely violated the officer's due process, inadvertently and ignorantly violated our officer's due process. Because if you remember, I said we have body cams, we have helmet cams, and they're on all the time until the situation is resolved or the situation is over and there's no further administrative reason for them to be on. That's just standard practice. Well, in telling us what happened and in giving us an account of what happened, that becomes part of evidence. And it also becomes a part of the administrative investigation. And while the officers did everything right. Our guys did everything right. Did everything right. Jorge did everything right. They acted in the absolute highest, the highest honor. They conducted themselves professionally within law, policy, the Constitution of the United States, and good judgment and sound reason. That could have been used against them had there been a reason to use anything against them. We certainly don't want to do that. That was a major lesson I learned, that but for my ignorant action, I could have inadvertently put one of my people in a bad position, which is that's a butterfly effect, isn't it? Not only does that affect that person, it affects their family, their livelihood, it affects our team, it affects our reputation, it affects our standing, and it affects the entire department's sometimes tricky balance with public trust with the people that we have the honor to serve. So that was something that when it was a light bulb moment, when we realized it and it was brought to our attention, it was like, oh, I can't believe I did that. That was so dumb. What was I thinking? Well, I wasn't thinking. I was thinking, oh my God, I've had 2 guys shot. I need to get there. I need to know what happened. Well, okay. Everybody understands that. Everybody wants to know what happened. But we still have to conduct ourselves in a professional fashion, and we have to be looking at second and third order effects. We can't afford to play checkers at that point. We have to be playing chess.
Mm-hmm.
Major leadership lesson, major personal lesson, and a major accountability lesson for me as a leader. In addition, compounding that was the fact that I was there in the first place. I had no business leaving the command post. My place is at the command post, making incident command decisions. There's a larger mission at work here. Yes, I want to get to my guys. Yes, I want to know who's hurt. Yes, I'm desperate to know the status of the guys that are injured. But everybody there is counting on everybody else to do their job. Bare minimum. And guess what? I'm in charge of all that. And I hold people accountable for doing their job. And I expect to be held, in turn, I expect to be held accountable for doing my job.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm not doing my job, and I'm not acting in a professional manner, and I am letting my human nature, although understandable, I'm letting human nature override that, then how can I hold anybody else to the same standard? So in leaving the command post and going to the crisis site, not only was that in violation of common sense and good judgment, it was also a violation of our SOPs. I'm expected to be doing certain things, and I am not doing what I need to be doing if I'm down in the middle of it. I'm in the weeds. I'm not looking at high-level decision-making, which is what needed to happen. Now, did that cost us operationally or in a tangible sense? No. Could it have? Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And right next to me is my lieutenant. And the thing about that is I don't hold him responsible for that. I hold myself accountable and responsible for that because he just went with me.
Mm-hmm.
And he was going with me. And I mean, he had pure reasons for doing so, but neither one of us should have left that command post. That is not how we act. That's not how we're supposed to do. Had our operators failed to do their jobs and they had let the wheels come off and worried about their personal feelings about on the ground, Jorge's on the ground, rather than finishing the engagement with the suspect, rather than continuing clearing the house, we might have had more people hurt. We might have had more deaths. We might have had more people that are still recovering from serious gunshot wounds. So if I expect that out of people, as a leader, I have to absolutely model that and be held accountable for that myself.
Mm-hmm.
Major lessons. Lastly, I recognize that maybe I had a perception problem. Maybe I had a perspective problem in that it never occurred to me. And we can say it all we want, that we understand that this is a dangerous job. We're not making ice cream,
Mm-hmm.
right? We got a dangerous job. And being on a tactical team, you're dealing with the worst situations, the most dangerous situations, the situations that, not because of capability, but because of resources and mission, that patrol is not geared up to handle. They don't have all the bells and whistles. They don't have the specialized training. They don't have the specialized weapons or the armor or, quite frankly, the duty to handle some of the things that a SWAT team does. Despite that, it is incumbent upon me as a leader to recognize that we indeed are not invincible. We're human beings, just like anybody else in this room, just like anybody listening out there. We have the same physiology, and things can hurt us just like they can hurt anybody else. And despite all of our absolute dedicated, committed training, despite all of our knowledge, our skills, our abilities, all the advantages we have going for us, sometimes we can and do get hurt. And unfortunately, sometimes we can and do get killed. And as leaders, we have to understand that. We have to, and if we don't realize that going into this, and we don't recognize it, then in the worst case, it can affect our judgment and the risks that we're willing to put our people through. We have to understand that any decision we make, anything that we expect our people to do, whether we give a direct order or we have just set the conditions for them to act independently, we have put in place a level of risk that is accepted. And if we don't understand what the consequences and ramifications of that can be, then we're not giving enough serious consideration to what we're willing to let our people do. And if we're doing that, if we're not seeing the forest for the trees there, then we could be making poor decisions. Mm-hmm. So as leaders, we have to understand that everything we say, everything we do, everything we've modeled, and the conditions we have set can have immediate, second, third order effects on our people, their families and the people that love them, our team, our department, our community, and everybody involved in that. And if we're not taking that as seriously and with the gravity it deserves, then we are failing completely as leaders.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow.
A lot to unpack.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us for this series. This was incredible. Yeah.
I appreciate it. I'm honored to be able to have this platform and this forum to discuss and to really reveal to everybody like I said, these guys are my heroes. They always have been, and to this day they are. And as a leader and as a person who had the absolute honor to lead the division I led and that team and all the people that go along with it, as a leader, you have to have a lot of love for the people that you lead. And if you don't have that love, then again, you're not going to make the decisions and the best. What's best for them, what's best for their families, what's best for our mission. Mm-hmm. It's mission first, but people always. And if you don't love the people that you have the honor of leading, well, then you shouldn't be leading them. And we had the worst happen to us. Yeah. Maybe that's not exactly accurate. The worst would be that we didn't even go and try and to save these people. Jorge died and was critically wounded doing what we were sent there to do, what they wanted to do, what they were specifically in a position to do. Winston Churchill once said that sometimes fate taps us on the shoulder because of our skills, our knowledge, our abilities. And if we're not there, if we don't have the commitment to do what fate needs us to do in that position, well, then that's a tragedy in itself. These guys were tapped on the shoulder that night. They were the best people to go and do that. We didn't have the result we wanted, but the real tragedy would have been if we had not answered the call at all. So being able to dedicate this series and being able to dedicate this, I'm not just here to tell a story. I'm certainly not here because I want to tell about how great I am or what I did, because I didn't do anything. It was the guys that went through the door. It was the guys that went through that door that knew that they may not get to come home that night. The guys that knew that no matter what, they were dedicated to stepping between a bad guy that was trying to kill others, step between them and the innocent people to save those people's lives. Those are the guys that this is dedicated to. And more specifically, this is dedicated to who was critically wounded that day. He's doing wonderfully now, and he is, if everybody was like, this world would be a lot different place. And of course, it's dedicated to Jorge Pastor, who lost his life in service of his fellow man and in trying to save other people's lives, which there's no higher calling. And we dedicate this to Jorge's memory, to his sacrifice in his service, and to everybody out there that's still doing this job. We tell this story so that we don't have to bury any more officers, and so that we understand the true ramifications of this, and we honor what what those guys did for us, because that's who they did it for. They did it for all of us.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for
Thanks
joining us.
Thanks for giving me the opportunity.
If you have any questions or topic suggestions for future episodes, please send us an email at podcast@ncbrt.lsu.edu. Make sure you subscribe to the LSU NCBRT Preparedness Podcast wherever you listen to podcasts.